Um, I've actually known Jeff longer than, I've known his family longer than I thought. So, and that's your wife's side of the family, not your side of the family. For those of you who came to Wales a couple of years ago, you tend to bring the bad weather when you come here. Yesterday was raining. But how many of you remember the great hurricane of 20, whatever it was? What was it? 20 something? 20, was it 22? Was it? Wow, okay, 2022. There was the great hurricane here, roofs flew off, everything happened, people couldn't leave. And one of the couples that couldn't leave were you and Jane. And you ended up walking into my parents' house, actually, and staying the night there. And little did we know and discover that actually my dad used to be the worship leader for Jane's dad's church. And here he ran church. So our history goes a long way back, but our more recent friendship and time together has been profound. I want to just thank you guys for. I was thinking about it last night. Why are we all crying? What's wrong with you, man? What's on the spot here? Let's move. I was thinking about it last night when you walked in my house, just came in, the way you welcomed us as a family. But actually, you have no idea the profound way that you are doing ministry, how it affects us. We came and stood in your building, and I'm not going to tell too many things, and walked down that little corridor with my phone that I'm not sure that two of me could have fitted in there because it's not that wide. And we went into this space downstairs, and I was blown away. Quit complaining. I just got a ticket for parking in the wrong place here. But quit complaining about parking, quit complaining about size, quit complaining about all the things, golf carts we need to bring people from the car park to our churches or whatever. And actually, when you get a people that say yes, and the profound ways that God has drawn people to you, Jeff, it is hugely compelling, you and your family, to come to your home and sit at your table and to just look around and go, geez, I best not complain. I have a lounge. Thank you. Thank you for paying a price as a family and having an effect on my family. Very nice. Let me pray for you. Father, I thank you for this man. I thank you for his wife and the kids as they fly in tonight, God. I thank you that the whole family is going to be together. And it's going to be such joy and such fun this weekend. But Lord, I thank you for the gift that he is. And in the uniqueness that he is, that's what we need right now. We need him in his rawness as you've brought him to us to be. So Lord, as he just speaks to us, let us just see beyond the words and recognize there's a life that this couple, them as individuals, have lived in order to bring them to this space. We will never understand the price that they've paid for the journey that they are on right now. And we appreciate them in Jesus' name. Amen. Can we appreciate Jeff before you preach? Bless you, man. Oh, yeah, you're a little taller, aren't you? Okay.
Not Welsh, bro. This is cool. Been in a couple of churches recently where I just said to them, you've got leaders, and so the theology and doctrine is set. You've got pastors in this church that you're taking care of, so I'm not trying to do any of that. I have no role or responsibility for that, and I'm not going to try. I just want to encourage you. I kind of feel the same today. I just want to encourage you, Chris. I don't really know what Chris asked me to share on, but I do know what God's put on his heart for this time. And I think as he shared it this morning, I just thought, oh, Chris, how are you doing this? I've probably known this couple for 25 years. And I'm like, 25 years later, it's like you find, I won't tell the story, but I ended up in hospital a few days ago, and I've got like 3 little spots where they try to find a vein. And this lady, she was like, I haven't been doing this for that long. And I'm like that, I'm queasy. But I was like, oh my God, and I'm sweating, and I'm about to faint, and she's just digging in my arm. And another older lady walks in, and she goes, are you all right? I was like, no, I'm not. But I feel like, if anything, Chris has the ability to just step in and find the vein of God's life in what he's busy doing right now. And I just think, Chris, what you shared is like it's touching on that vein. I can't wait for the next few days as you just help us to navigate that vein of life of what God's doing. I think one of the privileges we've had is just stumbling upon the vein of life of God, what he's doing in Europe. But just before I get there, I'm Jeff, and my wife is Jane. We have 3 beautiful little kids. They're terrifying at times, but they'll be here tonight. I met Jesus at a really young age. At 18 years old, I moved to a city. There's a whole story that led to that, but essentially, I was a little bit disillusioned with church, and but I loved Jesus, and I wanted to see people come into freedom. So I met a guy who he'd been living on the street for a while. He got into drugs. He got a job, fell back into drugs, and one day he walked up to me in the street, random moment. He said, "Can you help me? I have demons." Like literally a stranger. I said, "I don't know." I said, "Why don't you come with me?" I fetched my demon hunter friend Mark, and the 2 of us sat and we prayed for this guy, and God did something amazing. The problem was he went and told his friends. And we had this double garage at this. I was running a residence, 25 people living in a house. It also used to be a brothel, like before we moved in, and so the customers would still come looking for a blonde or a brunette, or that was interesting. And some of them met Jesus, just like there's a whole bunch of stories to it. But what happened was that house and that double garage became a meeting of 50 people over a couple of months. And a girl by the name of Christine Scorpin used to say to me, she says, "This isn't biblical what's happening here. We're the elders, we're the deacons." And I was like, just shut up. I was like, while you're trying to figure out your whole leadership thing, we're actually getting on with it. Like while you churches are arguing about stuff, we're getting on with it over here. I was very humbled though, because I knew she was right. Went to a little church called 3CI, about 150 people, sat there with my friends and wept as I saw God was at work. God was doing something. What I saw, I'm like, this is the real deal. And what I saw was a compelling community of people that drew me in. Disgruntled, hurt, living in sin in the moment while I'm serving Jesus, just a whole bunch of mess, but it drew me in. It was compelling. And I went through 4 or 5 leaders. I was 19 at that stage, came on to staff the next year, was on staff in that church for 21 years. We were on eldership there for 15 years. It was like we watched the progression of a church of 150 become a church of now 10,000 people. I played every part, every role in that church, but just watched as the life of God just oozed through the church. That vein got bigger and bigger and bigger, and God just sent people. And I think when we started speaking about planting in Lisbon, there's something in us saying, I don't want to leave the life of God. There's something beautiful here. We'd seen the good, the bad, the ugly. We had many leaders, different kinds, types, shapes, all kinds of. We've seen it all, but we were compelled by God to go and do something. And we've seen God's gracious hand. And I think essentially all I want to say today is that God is doing something incredible in Europe. It is out of control. It's in some ways, it's out of control what God is busy doing in Europe right now. I just don't know that everyone's seeing it. That's my concern. I think I have I live with a concern. I lie awake sometimes at night. I'm like, why is no one seeing what's going on? And I think when Chris started with Isaiah 40, make a way in the wilderness. It's yes, Jesus. That wasn't very, Isaiah 40 was long before, but John the Baptist was just before. I feel like this is a John the Baptist make a way. Not there's something coming, he's here, he's arrived, he's alive, he's walking around. The evidence of what I see is Jesus walking amongst the lampstands, sometimes outside of the lampstands, because the lampstands don't have time for him, but it's Jesus he's walking amongst the lampstands. He's here, this is it. This is the moment. I stood up at church the other day. We had an event. We have 2 meetings. We got our 2 meetings together in a beautiful space under the bridge in Lisbon. I just looked over the crowd and I just thought, this is our church? Because we meet in a little basement, but then we have overflow and we have toddlers' rooms. I was telling Chris now, there's people sitting everywhere, and then we have to do that twice. And we've never seen the church. So to see the church in one moment, I was like, what? And I was shocked. And then people saw photos and videos. They're like, Jeff, what happened? You guys you joined an event. And I was like, no, it's just our church. I don't know what happened there. And I just realized we don't actually even we can't even see what he's busy with. There's little glimpses. But we speak about the Jesus movement, and we'll speak about the charismatic renewal that most of us were part of, and it restored something. Some of us have got some allergies in us because of those days and the excesses and the weird stuff. But we're in a renewal of God right now. I don't like talking about it. I've never mentioned that word, and you won't hear me going there, but this whole thing around a silent revival that's happening in Europe and England, it's not something I would talk about just because I feel like everything I read about it, we've seen for the last 5 years. It's evident. It's everywhere. And also, by the time you're talking about a silent revival, it's not silent anymore. So it's... And I was in a meeting 2 weeks ago with Pete Gregg, who's spoken a lot about it, and he's put a lot of effort into that prayer throughout the continent and everything that's happening. And he just said that, he said those words, he said it's not silent anymore. He says, but statistics are showing this. But just remember, statistics show us what happened. That's what's happened. So what's God doing now? And so what I've seen over the last 5 years is the people for 5 years, I've only been in Europe for 5 years. That's why I'm saying 5 years. I've seen people just panicking, sweating, because the silent revival is overwhelming and we don't know what to do with it. And then there's people that are crying out for a revival. Now, I think all through history, we should be asking God to renew, to revive, but what I've seen is people actually shepherding a revival, and then I've been seeing people not seeing it and asking God for a revival, because when they look, what they see is the opposite of a revival. We see a retreat. We see brokenness. We see the church in a state that needs the life of God. And myself and Jane, we lie in bed often and we say, what is this divide? It's half of our friends that lead churches are just panicked because it's out of control, going to 3, 4, 5 five meetings. It's they don't know what to do. They can't shepherd all the people. Everyone's still on the last 20 years discipleship train. And it's dude, we don't have time for those clever things. We just need to get to the people. We just need to baptize them. Just that's all. Just baptize them. That's enough. And these are not, I'm not talking about entertainment houses that draw people that are seeker sensitive. And then other people are just desperately waiting for God to bring revival. But in our coffee shop, I was walking past a group of people sitting at a couch, and I just picked up some plates, and I looked onto this guy's website, and it just, a church website, just looks like a church website. So I looked, and it looked like a church website. So I stuck around for a little bit to just hear it, and then I realized they're speaking Norwegian or something, so it wasn't going to help. And then I looked, and I'm like, that is a church website. So I said, hey, where are you guys from? They said, no, Oslo. I said, what are you doing here? No, we came on a fitness retreat. I didn't know that was a thing. But they came to Lisbon on a fitness retreat. So I said, okay, well, I'm trying to fish now. I was like, what do you guys do in Oslo? No, we both lead churches. I said, oh, okay, that's interesting. Tell me a little bit more. We lead churches. We both took over more or less 5 years ago, but it's not going well in Oslo. Nobody wants to come to church. There's really just no appetite for God in the culture. Young people have no interest. Anyway, they go on about this, and they just said their churches are shrinking. They're thinking of becoming one church together, and they're just sitting here. They came on the retreat together because they're friends. Anyway, just quite a bleak picture of what's happening in Oslo. Fast forward a couple of weeks. I'm in London 2 weeks ago. Meet this guy with a beard. He's definitely from Oslo. Just a Oslo, I don't know what you'd call it. Oslonian Viking guy. And we're sitting there, and I hear that he's from Oslo. So now I'm interested because I just heard about Oslo. We have lunch. I said to him, you're from Oslo. I said, tell me what's happening church-wise there. He says, bro, it's out of control. He says, I planted a church 8 years ago. In the last 3 years, we've planted 9 sites, and 8 of the 9, we have problems with our buildings. We don't have space. We don't know what to do. He says we're starting to combine. We just don't have staff, and we don't have the help. So now for the 9 sites, we do 1 baptism in this lake, and we do it every single week. And sometimes it's 20, sometimes it's 30 people, and we just keep baptizing people. And he still starts talking, but he starts weeping. And he just says, we've planted churches, and now we've planted sites. And he says, we're not good at leading church. He says, I don't know what I'm doing. But I said, who's coming to church? I asked him, tell me I said, if there's something about your church that you feel is precious, and you'd be like, that very thing no one must touch. He said, it's hard to say, but I think people are allowed to date Jesus for a long time in our church. So I was like, that's beautiful, because we've actually used that language. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. But I just thought, like, what is the difference between these two worlds? Like, those other two guys were cooler, younger, fresher. They had some really cool ideas they were talking about there when they come together. This guy's like, I don't know what I'm doing, but the life of God is just flowing. Some people say, is it gift? Is it this? I don't know. I think this guy's not in the way what God's doing. I think he's been leading. He was new in ministry. He doesn't have preconceived ideas of what it should look like. I mustn't tell stories. I'm going to go. But Isaiah 40, it says, every valley should be raised up, every mountain and hill made low. The rough ground shall become level, and the rugged places a plain, and the glory of the Lord will be revealed, and all people will see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. Rory Dyer, who Chris mentioned earlier, often he would drill this into us. Every valley must be raised up, and every mountain must be made low. I think there's excesses inside of all of us, and in the church world, there's excesses. There are kind of like these pools. And I remember I was 16 years old. I was in a church meeting, and Auntie Sarah was in her 80s. She was in our church as long as I could remember. She passed away just after we had this conversation. And Auntie Sarah, I don't think she was ever married. I was standing in the front worshiping the one day, and she came and put her hand on me, and she was really short. And I looked and I didn't see her, and then I looked down, and there she was. And she said, young man, God is going to use you to build his church. She said, just Jesus. So I said, yes. She was like, just Jesus. Whatever you build, it must just be about Jesus. So I said, okay, cool. And I just like those words, it's crazy because it's 25 years later and I can remember those words, just Jesus. And I've had loads of conversations with people recently, and I just realized all we're trying to build is just something that's about Jesus. There's lots of excesses. There's lots of other things that can be. But I realized there's so many distractions in the church world. There's so many pulls. There's, I think I'll remind, I keep saying to Jane, just Jesus. People in our church come, and like we've got 70 nationalities in the church. So, and it's like church and unchurched and all sorts. And you can imagine the pulls. And church has been going for 4 years, so you feel like there's some culture building, but still the pulls are hard. You know what I'm talking about. And I'm like, guys, I'm sorry, we don't do any. I often stand up on a Sunday. I'm like, all that stuff you've been asking, we don't do any of it. I'm sorry. And I've literally put a list together of the other churches now. And I'm like, these churches do all of that stuff. We don't. I'm sorry. Like, we're just really simple. And I just said, Jane, like, I just don't think we're called to it. And so we were with the church 3 or 4 weeks ago in Lisbon. And I said, what do you guys feel called to? And everything they said was what we don't feel called to. And I just said, man, it's good to be with you guys. I was like, we're going to build our part of the wall. You're going to build your part of the wall. But it's like they actually haven't had the confidence. I had to actually put the confidence in. I had to like call it out to them and say, when I know them, Ruben and Gabby, I'm like, God has called you to that, Ruben. There's an authority coming on you, and you are just pastoral. Like, get over it. Like, you're not governmental, and you're not this, but you are very pastoral. And Gabby, you are highly governmental. You're amazing. You're a mover and shaker. You can change government. She speaks at the tech summits and everything. I was like, guys, please, can you just be that? And we're just going to be this, and we're going to build together, and we're going to see God do something incredible. And I realized, like, we all have excesses, though, and it's just that the valley's been lifted up, the mountaintop's been lowered. Most of that is stuff that people would have to call out because the Holy Spirit's been trying for a long time, but we don't hear him on. No, mountain and valley stuff, we need people to speak into that. So it's not fun. But Isaiah 42 is where what we were birthed as a church in. And sorry, this is for us, but I prayed about it. This is what I felt to bring. Chris starts with Isaiah 40, make a way in the wilderness. I think Europe has been a little bit of a wilderness. When I arrived, everyone told me Europe's a wilderness of the gospel. Okay, cool, when God's making a way. And then he says in Isaiah 42 from verse 14, for a long time I have kept silent. I have been quiet and I held myself back. But now, like a woman in childbirth, I cry out. I gasp and I pant. Verse 16 says, I will lead the blind by the ways that have not known, along unfamiliar paths. Where I'm seeing the life of God move is people saying, like, I don't know what I'm doing, but God's leading us. I will guide them. I will turn their darkness into light before them. I will make the rough places smooth. These are the things that I will do. I will not forsake them. You go through these couple of verses, I can't think of a portion of scripture, the word I, in more than this. Verse 20 says, you have seen many things, but you pay no attention. Your ears are not open, you do not listen. I think there are things in front of us right now. I think the harvest is plentiful. I think God has set a table in front of us, and we're not seeing it. Someone asked me, I was telling someone, we were sharing stories about our conspiracy theory moms. And we had this conversation just around like the conspiracy theories and the craziness and end times and just everything that's come up. And then I had a conversation with a British guy that's studying neuroscience in our church. He's doing his PhD. And one of the things that they're studying is what makes some people, from a neurological perspective, what makes people, so emotional perspective they've studied, but now neurologically, what makes people more susceptible to conspiracy theories. I think it's a helpful PhD to be doing right now. He says you first have to define a conspiracy theory, but he would be the first one to say that conspiracy theories are all based in some form of truth, otherwise they wouldn't grasp hold of society. And so I had this conversation with him about my mom as well. And we're just talking about, and it's like this and that and everything. So eventually I just said to my mom and to other people, I was like, I don't disagree with anything you're saying, control and this and foods and governments and all this and book of Revelation. Like, I don't disagree with it. I just don't think it's the point. I said, because what you're showing me is the hand of the enemy everywhere. You're showing me the evil of humanity. I just said, my role, not only as a church leader, my role as a Christian is to see the redemptive hand of God all across the world. That's my role as a Christian. You can say, oh, but you're being ignorant. And it's like, no. Like, there's a lot of people that have different roles. My role is to see the redemptive hand of God in every sphere of society, in every grouping of people, in our church, in the lives of people, in government, in everywhere, to see the redemptive hand of God, to see the outpouring of God into society. And if I'm obsessed with everything that the enemy is getting right, I think I will be blinded. And I've just had to change my way of thinking. And I just said to Jane, my wife, I said, behold, I'm doing a new thing. Which eventually gets to in Isaiah 43. It says, since you are precious and honored in my sight, and because I love you, I will give you people in exchange for you, nations in exchange for your life. Do not be afraid, I am with you. I will bring your children from the east and gather them from the west. I'll say to the north, give them up, and to the south, do not hold back. Bring my sons from afar, and bring my daughters from the ends of the earth. Forget the former things. Do not dwell in the past. See, I am doing a new thing. It springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. There is something before us. I said to Heath recently, he said, what's your heart for Europe? I said, I don't know, but I do know this, that when I look at Europe and I speak to pastors all around Europe, it's as if they're happy to just settle for the scraps. It's like we know something amazing happens in America, and we know kind of what's happening in Africa, and there's this like kind of revival happening in China and some of the eastern countries, but like in Europe, we just settle for our little churches and this little scrap that and I've asked guys, I'm like, but there's a whole feast in front of us. Why would we be settling for retreating, for settling, for like this kind of like this side of the River Jordan, kind of like this is good enough? And I think sometimes it's because the reality that we know is not as scary as the reality we don't know, like the unexplored lands of what God is presenting before us. We have a generation change. We've had technological change, and we've had COVID, and like all the fabric of society has shifted, and yet we're trying to repeat the things of the past in a kind of like more modern way and hoping that the world will flock to the so-called gospel. But it's like a church practice that we've got, and we want to wax it and make it better, make it kind of like refresh it and hope that there's a reality to people running in. And I think what we've said is that nostalgia kills. The same nostalgia that feeds our communities is the nostalgia that holds the world at a distance. It's the very elements that feed our Christian nostalgia. So our worship sets and our experiences and the feelings that are generated through certain moments and some of the terminology that we use. And like none of those are bad things. But when they're for nostalgic purposes, and it's a thin line, and it's just something that I'm seeing, is like you go into churches and there's a feeding of the nostalgic reality of the Christians. And it makes Christians happy, but it freaks the world out. And I'm not talking about seeker sensitive. People come to Freedom City and they're like, oh, wow, you preached the gospel. Like, they're expecting that, I don't know, we're going to give like a little candy version of the gospel because 70% of our community is new believers. They think like, there must be a way that you're getting them there. And I'm like, no, we preach the gospel harder than I've ever heard it preached in my life. But we're preaching the gospel, the good news of Christ. We're preaching the gospel. We're preaching that there's a way to walk that leads to life and life everlasting. We're showing them a route. And it's the same nostalgia that Christians almost get a kick out of. It gives you a high. So at the same time that some people are seeing these new avenues of the gospel and saying like the opportunities are endless, God is doing things everywhere, like let's move forward into something. It's just surprising to me that we also have at the same time a returning to some of the practices of the 90s. Like there's some things that we really celebrated in the 90s. Like deliverance has become such a big thing. Is it fine if I say this? And I'm just saying stuff, then Chris is going to correct it all a little bit later. But I just see the returning to some of the practices, the nostalgic things that we were like, when there was a move of God, these are the things that happened. This is what leads to freedom and instant freedom. And so we were down, you'll meet some of the guys, we'll be here tonight. We'll be arriving tonight, and there's a grouping. We don't know if it's going to be a church plant, just a community that's forming, but we're working with some guys down in the southern Portugal. And so once a month we go down and we have a worship, just a time of worship. I share something. We're gathering these people. All of them are brand new believers. There's probably about 20 of them that come regularly, some others that join us. It's brand new, virgin territory, all hippies, crazy guys, all on psychedelics, even when they come to the meeting. But God is busy doing something. And every time we go, it's like I get goosebumps even driving in there as God is busy doing something. And so Richard and Emelina have been walking a road with a lot of these people. And then there were these 3 girls that are like brand new, just like exploring their faith. Jesus spoke to the one while she was surfing. The other one was on psychedelics and she met Jesus but really met Jesus. And they leave everything overnight. It's like they lose their incomes because of what they're leaving. That's what we're seeing. And they come there. And then this British couple, they had joined us. They led a church in England. They're now kind of like exploring Portugal. And they came and they walked in and we're having the most beautiful time. And they called the one lady and they said, no, we need to pray for you. And they just start going like, Shandaraba, like screaming at her. And I was like, what is going on? Next thing they're like, out, out. And I was like, what the heck's going on? Yeah, I was freaked out. Anyway, they keep going. I was like, guys, just relax over there. No. She needs freedom. I'm like, yeah, that's why she's on a journey with Jesus. Just leave her alone. Anyway, they like take her outside and they start screaming. The 3 ladies, just one by one, and within 10 minutes, leave. I said to Emelina the next day, like, have you contacted them? She said, no, all 3 of them were like, sorry, that was just like, I don't know what is going on. And it wasn't like, as Christians, we don't practice our faith in a way that leads to freedom. It's just that we're on a whole journey with these people, and there's this moment where the stylistic realities of what we think lead to freedom. Those are just practices, just stylistic practices. We all believe in freedom in Christ. We believe it can happen in a moment or over a period of time. But like stylistically, this couple is so used to it happening in a very specific paradigm, they couldn't leave their paradigm to serve the moment. So they served the picture rather than serving the people. And because they couldn't release that, they were like, oh, but why would you not do it? I was like, no. So I just told them, actually, guys, you're not welcome here. Like, it sounds harsh to you, but I'm like, you're not welcome here. Like, you're not adding it. Because they just said, no, we'll do it. I said, please don't do that again. They said, no, we'll do it again if we feel like it. So I said, then you're not welcome in this house. Because I'm protective over what God is doing there. And it's like, you know what? It's just polite. If someone comes into your house and they got their shoes on, you're like, hey, what are you doing with your shoes on? Get your shoes off. It's not polite. Like, Maybe your wife spent the whole day cleaning the house. You want to ask them to take their shoes off, but it's like, be polite about it. These 3 girls, I don't even know what Jesus' name is. One of them asked me, so you're telling me the Jesus guy and the God character are related? So this is like a new journey, and now the lady wants to free them in a moment. I'm like, I don't even know what that was. Sorry. But I just think, like, what I've just seen is like, I've just seen a group of polite people willing to walk a journey. And so, and then I see people holding the line. The problem with holding the line of faith in Europe is you get quite fundamentalist, and then you start disqualifying others because they're not as fundamentalist or serious about it as you. Then you get critical, because now you're critical. Wherever God's moving and there's groups of people forming, you get critical of it because something must be, and then you get grumpy because being critical isn't fun. Then you get disheartened because you're like, maybe I am missing it. Then you're fully disillusioned because you're like, I don't know if God's even with us. And then you get a hard heart and everyone else is wrong. You see, David had the ability to move through these things. Being disheartened, being disillusioned, being grumpy is all fine. But David had the ability to move seamlessly between these feelings of excitement, faith, disillusionment, unknown. Like Meryl will tell you, we have to feel these feelings. We have to be in the unknown. We have to navigate it, being rejected, being misunderstood. But we need to be able to navigate through it seamlessly and move on. And so, yes, I know there's nothing new under the sun. Like the clever guy told us that. There's nothing new under the sun, but we do lead in a place, in a city. This city is very different to Lisbon. Lisbon's very different to Berlin. Berlin's very different to London. So I lead in a place, and I lead in a time in history. At first it was in COVID, now it's post-COVID. I lead a people, and it's a time in all of history. So it's not just a time right now, it's a timeline of the historical realities of the church and where we're at. See, if 3CR, the amazing church I planted, if it was in 3CR, it'd suck. Like 3CR would suck in Lisbon. Like that wouldn't work. Great heart, vein of God, beautiful. But the practices that we held on to there, if I brought those practices into Lisbon, I don't think we would have reached any of these people. I had a conversation with a young Argentinian guy who's definitely not a believer. He comes to our cafe, and he said, Jeff, so what do you, he said, I'm starting to think, this is randomly, I'm starting to think that maybe some of the paradigms of what I've built my life on, I've made some mistakes and now they're wrong. So I said, no, I don't agree with you. He said, no, I think so. I think my life just doesn't feel like it's gelling. I think maybe some of the decisions I've made and some of the things I've done are corrupted. That's the word he used, corrupted. So I said, no, I don't agree. He says, well, what do you think then? I said, I think we were all born corrupted. I said, I think humanity is corrupted. He's like, whoa. We had a slow conversation, went on half an hour. He was pushing me to say some stuff. I didn't. Later in the day, another half an hour conversation. I still didn't. A week later, he said, what do you base all of this on? Because the thing is, like, if you're going to love the guy, I'm giving him time. He's not loved like that by anyone else in the city. Like, he came to me. He's like, what do you base it on? We had a long conversation about Jesus for an hour. We've set up next week to have another one. But I'm just seeing God is busy. There is a rawness in Europe right now, where the darker it gets, the brighter that light shines, easier the light shines. There's an ease that everyone is telling me about. I met this guy in Oslo, he's telling me, I meet a guy from Switzerland, young guy, he's just this like ordinary dude. And I said, where are you? He said, no, I'm in Switzerland. He tells me where he's in Switzerland. I said, I was there recently, I was preaching at a church there. Backstory is, this church is kind of like just going along, and they keep telling me how the Swiss people in Switzerland don't want to come to church, they're disillusioned, the young people aren't interested, that's why they don't have youth. I say to this guy, I heard Switzerland's quite close to the gospel. He's like, bro, look at me, I've gone grey overnight. He said, we planted a church 1 year ago. He said, we've got 4 sites, we don't know what to do, it's old people, it's young people, it's married people, it's unmarried people. He said, people just get saved. He said, you look them in the eyes and they meet Jesus. I said, oh, you're evangelist. He's like, no, everyone tells me that's the last thing I am. He says, I'm probably an administrator at best. He says, but it's like, you just, everywhere. So it happens to be the same city as this friend of mine. And I'm going like, I don't understand. I don't understand. Same is happening in Lisbon. People tell me, like, people are close to the gospel. People tell me we don't know how to find more buildings. Berlin. We've got more and more people that end up in Berlin from our church. So there's a church there that we send them to. The guy messages me the other day. He's like, bro, you need to stop sending people to our church. We can't take care of them. It's just out of control here. God is doing amazing things, but you can't tell them this is a good church because I don't feel like if the feedback gets back to you, they're going to tell you that we're not looking after them because we don't have the capacity, the leaders, or the space to do that. But the funny thing is Jane was sitting on a bus next to a lady from Berlin. She happens to be a Christian, and she was just saying, like, I'm the only Christian in Berlin, and like God's not doing anything, and our church is dying. And I'm just like, I keep hearing these stories, and I'm going like, what's happening here? There's a small little town in Italy, in the mountain between the two lakes. We've got a guy in our church that travels there often. He's a pilot, and he was there recently and stumbled into this little church, and he was like, oh, this is nice, about 100 people. And he says, no, this is our 5th meeting for the day. He says, 1 year ago, we had 1 meeting. And my dad's family is Italian, and all they tell me is that there's no space for the gospel in Italy, and they tell me about the Catholic Church, and they tell me about these things. Anyway, I can go on and on and on. Preached in a lot of churches recently. I don't know why. I just think people are tired of preaching, so they just ask you to come visit them. But we sat with their leadership teams and asked them a few questions. And we just said, like, what is God busy doing in the city? And they can tell me what God's doing in the church, but they don't know what God's doing in the city. I said, like, well, let's get a read on the culture. Let's ask some questions. And just in a few moments, I just see their eyes opening and saying, guys, there's opportunities everywhere. We got a phone call from a church in London recently. I know the leader. We had a house, university students in South Africa. We always had people living with us. There were 4 guys that lived with us. They're all married now, so now there's 8 of them, and they all live in London, and they've all joined this church. And we just sowed our lives into their lives, just sowed into them. That's the leadership team of that church now. They joined when there were 30 people in the church. Those 8 people joined. The church is now 300 a year and a half later, just because they come there with intent. And I think, I'm not being funny, but I think maybe we just taught them to look at the world with redemptive lenses, to see the life of God and to just feed that. And there's just something amazing happening there. And so we've invited the couple that lead that church to come and join us in Lisbon for a week and just said, like, just come have a holiday and spend time here, and we'll show you around, and I want you to preach to us. And we've given you 8 leaders. You can just come. You can give us a gift back. But we baptized 6 people on this last Sunday. And there was a guy, his name's Elvis. He leads a church in Portugal. His name is really Elvis. And he went to the beach that day. He's an old guy, yeah. But his church, he leads a church, and it's kind of like shrunk down. And I've had conversations with him. And he went to the beach that day, just went for a prayer walk. And he watched 6 people being baptized at the beach. Didn't know who was baptizing who. We had about 60 people supporting the baptisms. And we've got Levi the Baptist. He looks like Jesus. He's coming tonight. He's our baptism guy because that has to happen every week. And this guy saw the 6 baptisms. He says he just wept. He says, Jesus, I want 6 baptisms in our church. This is in Lisbon. He says, I want 6 baptisms in our church. Anyway, I went home, saw Instagram, and realized, oh, that was Freedom City. So messages me, says, I was at the beach, and it was so encouraging. I saw 6 baptisms, and my prayer is I want to see 6. So I said to him, okay, we're going to do coffee next week, and we're going to trust that there's at least one. And we're going to do this together. Anyway, I was climbing onto the plane yesterday, and he messaged me. And he said, I just sat with a couple. They've just had a baby. They're not Christians. They're asking the question, like, what's the meaning of life? What are we going to raise our kids in? He says, I shared the love of Jesus with them. And he says, they cried so much we couldn't talk much more. But he says, I just got a message from them. They both want to be baptized. I don't have anything else to say. And I know it isn't a preach or anything, but I said to Jane, I'm not trying to be dramatic or weird or anything. It's just, I often say to Jane, I'm scared. I walk in the streets. I leave our house and I walk down to where we're going. And I'm like scared to talk to people because they're going to meet Jesus. That's how hungry they are. The people are like desperate for Jesus. And it's not everywhere. We visited her family in Berlin, in Cologne. And I'm not an evangelist, guys. I promise you I'm not. Visited her family in Cologne in Germany. We're sitting in a restaurant. I saw this couple there. And our daughter's sitting there, and they said, hey, this moment happened for us just now. There's a meme. If you've got kids with Down syndrome, it's like, you too, and there's like this big hug because we know this world, man. And this couple said, is that your daughter? I said, yes. And they started crying. They said, we've got a daughter. She passed away recently. She had Down syndrome. And there's a connection. There just is. If you've got a child with Down syndrome, there's a connection. I said, it's been hard. And they said, it has. We had a conversation, and they said, when we were younger, we used to be Christians, and we used to have a faith that held us. As we got older, we had friends. Now we don't have our faith, and we don't have our friends. And I had a conversation with them 2 weeks ago. They flew. This is a year ago. 2 weeks ago, they flew to Lisbon. They said, we don't have Jesus. We don't think he wants us anymore. We don't have friends. You're the only connection of hope we've had in the last year. And I was like, what? And I was like, we need a church in Cologne, guys, like a place of hope. You see, what Isaiah 42 says is, you establish a home, and I will send my sons and daughters from the north, the east, the south, and the west. I will gather them. Someone counted me on this the other day. They visited our church once. They're like, where does it say this in the Bible? I said, I don't know, but I'm seeing it in front of me. Like, I think the only thing I've learned is I either serve the picture in my head or I serve the people. And when God speaks prophetically, when God called you, you created a picture in your head of what that would look like. I think we're all old enough now to have realized that he doesn't serve that picture. True? Like it does, our churches, our roles don't look like what we planned for it to look like. But I think we're still serving some pictures. I think we're all serving pictures, and we get a sense of God moving, and we retreat to what we know, and we miss the opportunity. What's tired us the most for the last 5 years is hold, because we know what to do in this moment now. And God says, hold, and then he comes flooding in. Hold, he comes flooding in. People are like, yeah, we should do a prophetic workshop. We should do this. And we're like, no. And we just hold. And I'm just seeing it happen everywhere. And like the common thread in everyone I've spoken to is, firstly, I don't know what they're doing. I think sometimes we just know what we're doing too well. We're like, oh, no, we know what to do in this situation. And God says, okay, well, there's not much space for me to move there. And they're willing to relinquish the pictures that they've had for so long of how God works. And I think what I'm so grateful for is I've lost more than I've gained. I realized in my 20s, I knew exactly how to build church. I have no clue now. So I don't know why you asked me to share anything, because I have no clue what we're doing. But Chris can wrap this up. Can I ask one last question? The guy in Switzerland, I said, what is the one thing in your church that you would not let go of? He said, immature Christians are allowed to be immature Christians in our church. Because if we don't let them be honest, be real, be immature, they're never going to mature. They're just going to learn the lingo. They're just going to learn the practices. They're just going to learn the win. And then they're going to become immature Christians who look like mature Christians. And he says, so we're happy for immature Christians to be immature Christians for 5 years, 10 years if they need to be. And I was like, I literally gave him a hug a little bit later on. I was like, it was so good to meet you, bro. Because I've often said to Jane, I was like, if my ministry friends come and visit our church, I'm going to feel condemned. Or they're going to correct me. I said, but we just want to give people space to go on a journey with Jesus. Every Sunday, I'm like, we're all on a journey with Jesus. That's all we're on. And I think the more space we've given for people to be where they're at, the more we've seen them mature so quickly. And we said, like, what if we let everyone be an immature Christian for 2 years? They're allowed to be an immature. Guys, 2 years is a very, very short part of your life, just by the way. And I just don't know if we've all got the patience to let our people be immature Christians for fully immature Christians. Like, enjoying pleasure the way they want to, doing everything, like not reading their Bibles, just be immature Christians. Like, are they allowed to be? Or we're too scared it's going to like water down the level of spirituality? It's actually just like, can they be who they are? And what we found is like, we've got a guy now that's going to start leading a Bible kind of like discovery group. We just said, you know what? You just need to be an immature Christian for 2 years, we said to him. Get to know Jesus. Just listen to what we've got to say. It's 6 months later. Honestly, I promise you, I know you don't believe me. He's much better than anyone else in our church at leading a Bible discovery group now. We've got 35 people signed up for it. It's like he has devoured scripture because there's been no, he didn't have to. But he was like, but every time I read this, it feeds me. And I just realized, if we've got space for people to be, one of our worship leaders came and spoke to us, and she said, I'm just having a lot of sex right now with different people. And that's my past, and it's caught up to me again. And so I'm just going to step away from this because this is not a healthy space. I can't lead people when I need to learn to lead myself better, whatever. I'm like, thank you, awesome, and we move on. We're going to give her the space. We've put 2 of our pastoral care team with her. They're friends already. They're walking a road. Already, she's in a great space. She's having sex with a lot of men on the weekends, and actually every day, she said. And I was like, but that's her reality. That whole world out there, the 99% of Europe, that's their reality. It's broken. It's a mess. We better be cool with mess. Can the mess come in? Or is it going to mess with our little neat, packaged churches that have their little worship moments, and we have our times, and everyone understands our prophetic language, and or do we let them in? It gets chaotic. We don't know what to do. But that life of God, just that vein, we climb onto that vein of what God's doing, and we see it happen. I think the research is not speaking about what's coming. I think it's what's happened. It's here. We're living in it. It's the move of God is busy moving, and he's asking, do you want to be part of it? We're the only things in the way. There's no, God hasn't given us a portion of it. He's not holding back on us. It's us as leaders. We're the only problem. We can be the only problem in our churches. The only limitation on seeing the life of God flow. And the masses. What if we're at the brink of the masses coming to know Christ? Because what have we been doing for the last 50 years other than preparing? We have to believe what's happened has readied us for where we're at right now. And God, those disciple guys weren't that impressive. So we're good enough. We'll be fine if God sends the masses. Chaos is probably the breeding ground of where we'll mature quicker. We'll grow into something, and we'll discover something beautiful of what God's doing. Anyway, Chris.
All right. So what do we do with that? Charismatic renewal, we had no clue what God was doing. Jesus People Movement, we had no clue what God was doing. The Apostolic Restoration Movement had no clue. Didn't even realize all that stuff was in the Bible. Toronto Blessing, we certainly had no clue, so-called. The missional movement, we didn't have a clue either. So maybe, and I don't want to be flippant here, maybe there's just a moment of sweet surrender. God, forgive me for what I do know that gets in the way. You know what I mean? It's like parenting. You think your first kid's great. You think, I've got this. I'm shredding. And then you have another kid and you're like, I know nothing. You know nothing, Jon Snow. So I wonder if we could just stand. I'm sure you're tired of sitting. Maybe we can, and this isn't ritual, please. I just want us to open our hands because it is true for us. And just invite God, the Holy Spirit, to come. As Jeff was speaking, honestly, we've seen those things happen over the years. This hasn't happened to us now. I've seen it over the years, but it isn't our story right now. Thank you for our history. Thank you for everything we've learned and all that we've done over time. For some, it's a year. For some, it's years. Others, decades and longer. And we're so grateful to you for that. Thank you for what you've taught us by your Holy Spirit. Thank you for what the Scriptures have opened up to us. But Lord, let none of those good, glorious things get in the way of what you are trying to do right now. Multitudes are in the valley of decision. That's what the prophet said. The bones. And Lord, anyone who ministers in this region, heart breaks for Western Europe. Such a great history and such a fragile present. And I just ask right now, oh God, for all of us, even now, come Lord Jesus. The life flows, rivers of living water, the great flames of heaven burning and scourging the earth. Whatever language we use, Lord. I'm going to put the mic down. Can we just use this as a moment just to cry out to God? If you want to pray something, just pray it out loud, whatever. But I think just a sweet and humble surrender would be really, really good.